Implausible Nature now has dice. That's right, you can get these awesome D6s made by our partner Baron of Dice. These custom dice have the Implausible Nature logo on the six side and also come with square corners, which means they will roll more evenly than rounded corner dice. Head on over to baronofdice.com and use discount code IN40K to get a discount on your order and support us at the same time. Check out his full collection of dice for all your gaming needs with the link down in the description.
Welcome to Implausible Nature, your home for all things Black Templar. On today's video, we are talking Data Slate. The Data Slate just came out, the MFM just came out a few days ago, and it is obviously the talk of the town. A lot of changes across the board, some really heavy nerfs to some of our opponents, including Eldar and Chaos Space Marines, some buffs for some other factions, including a little bit of buffs for Custodes and a huge buff for Drukhari. But we are here to talk about Space Marines. So specifically our beloved Black Templars. Without further ado, let's get into it. There were only three changes for Black Templars. The first two were a little unexpected, but not necessarily unwarranted. Both Grimaldus and Helbricht both went up 25 points. They are now 120 each. So there's been a lot of hemming and hawing. I've seen people talking about, well, are they still worth it? It feels bad. I don't know if Grimaldus deserved this nerf, etc. Helbricht, warranted, but I don't know if I'm going to take him. He's expensive now. Bob, what do you think about that talk? Do we think Helbricht and Grimaldus are still basically, auto takes if you're taking the respective unit to go with them in a list?
Well, first, before I get into that, I will say that I agree with the Helbricht nerf. I am hesitant on the Grimaldus nerf simply because there's only one viable way of using him, and it was not in a tournament list that high places. So I was a little bit curious. But with that being said, they're both extremely powerful still for what they do and the points that you're doing. Now, Helbricht was ridiculously cheap for what you got.
Yeah.
At 95 points. Just absolutely.
He's like a Primarch level character. That's not a Primarch.
Just
so
I can 100% see why this is a change. Most people were talking Sword Brethren were going to get nerfed, and I was like, no, that's not what's going to get nerfed. It was a little bit of surprise for Helbricht, but I can see what they did there because they don't like the big buff that he gets from the Sword Brethren without paying a few more points for it. So Grimaldus, you're really only using him with a 20-man Crusader squad, specifically the Primaris ones. And those are kind of skewless. You don't see a lot of tournament lists with them. So, but he's still very good, even at the 120 points. So if you're playing into those 20-man blocks, take him. I mean, 25 points you can find it someplace.
Yeah,
he's worth it.
Yeah, I agree. Helbricht is definitely warranted. He's still in virtually every one of my lists. So that hasn't changed. He's still an absolute monster. Grimaldus, if I want to take a 20-man, I'm taking Grimaldus. That's all there is to it. He's the best option for it. He hands out a plethora of buffs. And he comes with 3 servitors, 2 of which can be ablative wounds that have a 4-up invul, a 3-up save, and a 5-up feel no pain. So, those are free wounds that you can use that could be potentially tanky. That you can tank some high damage shots. Like, oh, you hit me with damage 3? Cool, I got a 4++ on this 1 wound neophyte or servitor, I guess. He's I still think he's worth the points. I mean, if I remember correctly, when we first started with 10th, I think they were around like 110, 115 or something each anyway. And we were taking them easily 100% of the time then too. So Grimaldus probably could have been fine with going to 110 versus 120, but I'm not going to quibble about 10 points here or there. It doesn't make them unplayable. They're just not stupid cheap anymore. So
Yep.
now the next unit that got a change, and the only other unit that got a change, as you said, Sword Bros didn't get changed, Primaris Crusaders didn't get changed. I knew they weren't going to get changed. They were not the problem, even though people are like, "Oh yeah, but Helbert with the Sword Bros can kill anything in the game." Yeah, he can with a 10-man, which is way overkill for 99% of the things that you want to throw them at. But a lot of that is Helbricht, providing crits on 5+, giving +1 strength, doing a truckload of damage himself. The Sword Bros buff him significantly, true, but people weren't spamming huge numbers of Sword Bros.
No.
So them not getting a change does not surprise me in the least. Not speaking of not surprising me in the least, Firstborn Crusaders went up as well. Now I think they got off light. They were 65 points before, and which was just ludicrously cheap for what they gave you, because it was a 5-man with 2 special weapons and sergeant gear, with 2 wound Marines that are OC2 for 65 points. Like, that's insane.
Yep.
They only went up to 75. I thought that was they got off light. They could have easily gone to 85, and I still would have been okay running a couple squads depending on my list. At 75, they're still very good to take 2 to 3 squads if you want to.
Yeah, with these guys, we all knew it was coming. That's what I predicted they were probably going to go to, was the 75 points. You can keep the receipts on those. It's all over YouTube. But ultimately, especially in the Iron Storm detachment, you're really only going to have to drop a unit.
Yeah, pretty much.
That's what you're seeing on it, and you're not going to see too much reduction in efficiency from this unit. 75 points is still very widely taken unit then for the various different things, whether it be in Iron Storm or Gladius or whatever you need for a cheap long range unit.
Yep. Yeah. They're also apparently pretty popular in Firestorm as well. People were popping them into rhinos, similar to your Iron Storm list that was utilizing that, and driving forward, getting that extra strength 10 incidental meltifier. So either way, they're still very, very usable at 75 points. So let's take a look at the regular Space Marine units. And starting with another popular unit that took an increase, Aggressors. Went up 10 points per 3 models. So a 6-man will now cost you 20 points more. And I don't think this is unwarranted either. I mean, in Gladius, they are ridiculous with fire discipline. In Firestorm, they are gross with the protocols. I can't think of the name. The flame one, the torrent weapon one that gives dev wounds. Yep. Immolation protocols. That's what it's called. So, and even in Righteous Crusaders, they're solid. So I don't think it's an unwarranted nerf to them. And it's not a bad one.
Yeah, I think it's definitely still a unit that's going to see play, especially in the examples that you listed. They're very good for what they did. They buffed their 2 or 3+ their power fists, and they put out a ton of shots. So I think they're still useful.
So moving on to the other nerfs in this, and then we'll talk about the buffs that Space Marines actually got. They did get some interesting buffs. Centurion Devastator squads went up. I think 10 points as well. I think people were utilizing these, not necessarily Black Templars, but in Vanguard, they were taking this. I don't think it's necessarily unwarranted, but I wasn't running them, so it doesn't affect me.
Yeah, this was a very popular take in the Ultramarine Vanguard list. They put out a lot of firepower for the points that you got, so I can see this going up for you.
Yep. And then, unsurprisingly, Inceptors also went up. They went up a hefty 20 points per three guys. Now, I can't really say this was unwarranted either. They were ridiculous at 110, very spammable. People were running anywhere from 12 to 15 of these guys in a list. So I'm not surprised to see them go up, though it is a little disappointing. But at 130, taking a single squad or maybe two, still very doable.
Yeah, this was a little bit heftier, so you can't spam them anymore. So this is going to be something that you're going to have to be a little bit more strategic, as pretty much all of our lists, I would suspect, had at least one unit in there. So you're going to have to drop those 20 points. Probably even have two. A lot of people had two. And that's going to be a hefty 40 points that we now have to cut from our list. So,
Yep.
but it was definitely warranted. These are the masters of secondary play. So, and primary, honestly.
Yep. And then Scouts also went up. Not unsurprisingly either, 10 points. They just have so many rules. For 55 points, I mean, they were silly good. So a fairly light touch with these. 65, I think, is still more than fair. You're still going to take one, maybe two squads, easily. This is a fine change, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree. I don't really have much else to say about that other than we knew it was coming.
Yeah.
10 points, I think, is enough for what they do. They don't have a ton of firepower, but they are more of a
Utility.
secondary, utility key piece.
So in the unwarranted and surprising department, Redemptors went up 10 points.
Why?
I don't know why. They were
Why?
barely takeable at 200. Now they're 210. That just makes it even harder. Like, I understand they're durable, but Plasma is not the world killer that it was. I don't understand this nerf at all. They really probably should have gone down 10 points, not up 10 points. So
Yeah.
I don't know what world GW was living in when they wrote this one, but it wasn't this one.
I mean, people were taking him in Ironstorm, but that wasn't what was making an Ironstorm successful.
Correct. Yeah.
So
it was spamming Crusader squads.
Yeah.
So, and then the Whirlwind went up 30 points. Now, the Whirlwind's pretty good. Is it 180 points good? I don't think so.
No.
I don't think so. It was great at 150, and it probably would have been great at 160, 165 maybe. But 180, I'd rather spend 10 more points and take a Vindicator.
Yeah.
So
I get what Games Workshop is trying to do. So they're trying to take indirect spam out of the game by literally nerfing everything that is indirect in the game significantly. I get it. No one likes playing against indirect, even with the indirect rules, because I mean they're good.
Still pretty good.
They're good.
Still pretty
but
good.
Now you're not going to take 3. You can't. There's no way. So maybe one.
I think they were a little heavy-handed. So
I mean, maybe, but we're probably not going to take more than one in a list, if that. Now, that's for sure.
Yeah, and the reason I think the part of the problem is you don't want to nerf something, you don't want it to be spammed, but you don't want to nerf it so much that people don't want to take it at all.
Yeah,
and I think we're borderline with that on the Whirlwind. All right, so that's it for the nerfs. Some interesting buffs. Assault Intercessors, Infernus Squads, and Intercessors all went down 5 points. So that makes Assault Ints now 75, super cheap. Infernus and Intercessors are both 80. How do you feel about those changes, Bob?
Honestly, probably irrelevant. Because we're mostly taking other units.
Yeah.
In small points lists, this is probably going to be seen more with some more importance. Emperor's Champion with the Assault Intercessor Squad does have some play. Out of
That's
the
150 points for the two of them. That's not
yeah,
bad.
it's pretty cheap. Throw them in an Impulsor and they're pretty good.
Yep.
Inferno Squad, I had initially thought that these guys were going to be pretty awesome, but mathematically, unless you're playing against like guard equivalent, they don't do a ton of damage unless you're in Firestorm.
Yeah.
And then intercessor squads, yeah, I can see taking one unit to get you some stickies, but ultimately you're probably taking infiltrators or scouts for that anyway,
Yeah.
to guard that home base, and you don't really want to leave it unprotected anyway
Unguarded. Yeah.
because
Exactly.
inceptors exist.
Yep.
So
Yep.
yeah,
Also, heavy intercessors went down to 100 points. I think that's also a 5-point change. They not a lot of Black Templar players use them. They sort of suffer from the same thing that intercessors do. Is like sort of what is the point of this unit? They don't deal a lot of damage. Sure, they're more durable, but they just don't. I don't know. They don't. They don't scratch any itches that we have.
I feel like they could potentially be useful in something like Vanguard, where they get that stealth and are always in cover, plus the additional durability that they have. And if you take enough of them, they might have some play. But you kind of have to skew into Gravis at that point, and that's not a list that I personally want to run. But I can
No.
see that being something that someone wants, and reducing their points to make that more applicable is okay for me.
Yeah.
Because right now they're not seeing a ton of play. I mean,
No.
that's just a fact of the matter.
No. Speaking of not seeing a ton of play, Outriders went down 15 points per
Still
three
crappy.
guys. So counterpoint, they're only 80 points. For 80 points, now, do I expect them to do any damage? No, nothing. They might, clear some guardsmen. Okay, cool. But for 80 points, they can move 18 with an advance because they auto advance 6. Now they can't do an action after that, but they could snag an objective. They could get to hit something like engage on all fronts, or extend battle lines. They're fast. They're fairly durable. They're tough 5 with 4 wounds apiece and a 3-up save. Are they going to see play in all the lists? No. But I don't think that they are completely useless. I think in Firestorm, they're very interesting because you get Assault. So now they can move 18 and do an action. That's pretty decent.
I
But
could see
I'm not taking.
maybe in Stormlands and Firestorm.
Yeah.
Maybe. But I don't like any of it. They're D- tiers for me still.
If I have 5 extra points, I'm going to take Assault Intercessors with jump packs. It's as simple as that. But if I don't, I might consider this. And then moving along, the Smurfs, Primarch got a points drop. No one cares. Sternguard veterans went down, I think 10 points. They're now 90 because their ability is not nearly as good as it used to be.
Mm-hmm.
So, which is unfortunate because they were pretty popular there for a minute when Oaths was reroll wounds. But I still think Sternguard are cool, and at 90 points, they're a little more playable. Am I taking them to a tournament? No. But they're, a fun casual unit, if nothing else.
Yeah, I think for 90 points, they can be decent. Firestorm is a good place for them. You're going to be upping their damage potential with the shenanigans that they can do with the transports. So I think that they have some play in some lists, but that's not a unit that I normally tank. But getting that 10-point drop is something that makes them a little bit more interesting now, because they're on like a level with a lot of the other Primaris now instead of that 100 points, which is kind of like that's just a
They
little
didn't
bit too
do
much.
enough at 100 points without wound rerolls for Oath.
Yeah.
So
So overall, I think it was a net nerf to Space Marines in general, simply because the Black Templars were too good in a lot of different things, and the pieces that we took in our lists that were very successful, and admittedly, Ultramarines were kind of making a push with the Vanguard detachment. Basically, it was Black Templars units that were popular and the Vanguard units. And really, because we were winning at a very high clip with those particular units, 60 percent, some weeks up to 65%. So I understand the nerfs. You want to make sure everyone stays in that Goldilocks zone. But with that being said, most of the stuff for our Righteous Zeal, or I'm sorry, Righteous Crusader detachment, we don't care. So we're going to drop one unit, a half a unit. So it's not a situation where we lose so much that we're hamstrung. So it's
yeah, I agree with that assessment. I think overall, while it was a net nerf for Space Marines and Black Templars in particular, I think we got off comparatively light. Um, so amazingly, for the most part, for us anyway, GW showed restraint,
mhm.
which is unusual. They could have very easily been like, oh, just, Black Templars are removed from the game, how that, whatever. Might as well be. um, you know,
We're too
uh,
good. We're
we're too
too good
good.
for
We're
once.
too
For
good
once.
for once. Yep. But, like I said, overall, I think it was, reasonable. I think the things that
Yep.
went up mostly were, okay, yeah, I understand that. That unit's really good. And they were reasonable. So that, forces us to essentially drop a unit or two, or rearrange a little bit our lists. Um, so overall, not bad. Some of the worst offenders in the meta got hammered. Chaos Space Marines and Eldari in particular. Um,
League of
so
Votan.
so Leagues of Votan. So that's another thing too to think about is while we did get a little nerf there, they got nerfed a lot, and those were the factions that were above us. If we hadn't got nerfed, we would be the next Eldar potentially, and then we don't want that. We don't want to be in the spotlight that much where we're going to be hammered by another nerf. So I'd rather take a small nerf now and keep us in that top of the Goldilocks zone is where we want to stay.
Yeah, and to be
So
honest with you, I'm a little bit surprised that they didn't touch the Iron Storm detachment itself in the data slate.
I was doing some research, and from what I gathered, outside of Black Templars and maybe one other, I forget the other faction. Most of the other factions were not doing well with Ironstorm. It was really Black Templars that were carrying the detachment with a ridiculous 65% win rate. So, I think that's why they looked at that and decided not to touch the detachment itself.
I mean, it's
So,
still very good.
yeah.
Even though we're probably a little bit biased because we're Black Templars and those are the units that we would be using anyway. But there is some other notations, just kind of quick things that kind of stood out with the actual balanced data slate is devastating wounds. Um, now Custodes can take saves against that. Um, so that's something of note.
But only Custodes.
Yeah, only Custodes. So
So somebody else who has like the chaplain, for example, who gives a Feel No Pain versus Mortal Wounds doesn't get that. Anybody else who has a Feel No Pain versus Mortal Wounds doesn't get that. It's only Custodes.
yeah, so that's important because Custodes are a more popular army
Yeah.
for their low cost. So we're
Mm-hmm.
probably going to see some of those coming out. Um, so that was a big one. Kind of shout out to our brethren in arms with the Blood Angels. Got an
They
extra
got a big
strength,
buff.
and
That's a pretty big buff.
yeah, so that's kind of cool for them. Um, Yeah, so that was kind of the big one. Other than that, the devastating wounds. In the rules commentary, there's some some rewrites on some of the commentary um, and how things work. So definitely, I want to make sure that you take a to look. Nothing game changing as far as that
Yeah,
goes.
some
Um,
good clarifications and
yeah,
things. But overall, I think it was a good data slate. They addressed some things that needed to be addressed. Even if we don't have to be happy about some of those things. I am very happy about some of the other armies that got addressed. But yeah, overall, not really too many complaints about it, to be honest. So yeah, we're gonna keep on crusading because that's what we do, and Black Templars I think are still very strong.
oh yeah, we're definitely are. Just you're going to be having to watch out for some Drakari because they're going to be at the top of the meta real fast. So get
Yep,
some games in against that Drakari as soon
yep,
as you can.
yep. So, all right, guys. Well, that's all we got for you today. Hopefully, that was fairly quick. And let us know, what do you think? What are your thoughts on the changes to the data slate, the points, all that kind of stuff? Let us know down in the comments. Don't forget to like and subscribe and click all the YouTube algorithm buttons. Don't forget to check out our Patreon. We've got a lot of really great benefits, and thank you so much to our Patreons. We could not do this without you, all of the support that you guys give. And check out our Discord as well. A lot of great stuff going on in there every day. And until next time, keep on crusading.